Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cloud Gaming Report, your weekly source of news about everything going on in the world of cloud gaming. I'm Zach, and in this week's episode we have a bunch of news about Parsec. They just released a pretty major update that has several major features such as early support for H.265, and we also have a little bit of news about Steam's in-home streaming program. They are now available on phones, and those devices will support the Steam controller. So some very cool news, a lot going on in the world of cloud gaming this week. So without further delay, guys, let's go ahead and jump right to it. The Steam Link app is now available for Android devices. The iOS version is stuck in the Apple review queue, so we don't know exactly when that will be made publicly available. But if you do have an Android device, you can now start testing the Steam Link app. It has full support for the Steam controller, which is actually something that I was surprised about, simply because the Steam controller didn't seem to be as well received as a lot of people were predicting, and it seems to be a pretty decisive controller, whether you like it or completely hate it. There doesn't seem to be a lot of people in between, but it is cool to see them pushing forward and continuing to support it and just not abandoning it and giving up on it. So outside of that, the Steam Link isn't exactly a cloud gaming topic because it is restricted to your home network. But it is cool to see Valve continue to push forward with their Steam in-home streaming program, and it is something I could see in the future be made natively supported with cloud gaming. Right now, you can kind of get away with a VPN type setup to use Steam in-home streaming, but it's not a great experience, and you're better off using a service like Parsec if you're wanting to play on a cloud server, in my opinion. But the groundwork that Valve is laying forward could definitely be used for cloud gaming in the future, and it's cool to see them continue to push out new features and improve upon the in-home streaming environment. If you are interested in the Steam Link app, the other channel that I produce content for, Flickstick, has a first look of the Steam Link app, so I recommend going and checking that out. Of course, after you finish this video, I'll put a link to that video in the description below, guys. So let's go ahead and move on to all the new features for Parsec, because that is a pretty long list and there is a lot of cool things there. This week, Parsec released a massive update titled Build 146-15 that adds a whole host of new features that really show how dedicated Parsec is to making an amazing app for game streaming both on your local network and also over the internet by utilizing cloud gaming rigs. So very cool features here, the first of which is the Party Finder. This was previously available, but it was invite only while it is in beta, and it is now ready for wide rollout, and it is a very cool feature that allows you to connect to other people's computers and play local multiplayer games together over the internet. I actually just released a dedicated video for this feature, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it in this video. Moving on, we have experimental support for H.265 compression. This will greatly reduce the amount of bandwidth required to transmit the same quality of video. About 40% is what I've been reading in the reduction in the bandwidth required. But at this point in time, it is only an experimental and does require newer NVIDIA hardware of the Maxwell generation or newer. They will be expanding H.265 to additional hardware profiles in the near future, but at this point in time, it is limited to those aforementioned NVIDIA cards, which is the GTX 900 series and the GTX 1000 series cards from the last couple years. So very cool news all in all, and H.265 also adds a lot of other cool features outside of just bandwidth saving measures. It does support much higher frame rates and as well as higher resolutions. So both are good news as we look forward to the future of Parsec and what we'll be able to do as the internet speeds across the nation slowly creep up and increase. We might be able to see more stable support for 144 FPS over the internet, or something like 4K over the internet being more achievable with the average internet, that the internet consumers have. So I'm hoping that 5G also improves the overall average speed that people will have access to, and hopefully the data plans change in relation to 5G to allow higher data caps so people can actually utilize cloud gaming over the cellular networks. A Directx rendering mode has just been added to Parsec. This is in addition to the already existing OpenGL rendering options, so you can now switch between DirectX and OpenGL, and this is going to be primarily useful for people running without a dedicated GPU and utilizing an older Intel CPU and running off of the integrated graphics of that Intel CPU, because it can sometimes struggle with OpenGL. So you should see some pretty substantial performance increases by using the DirectX rendering mode. IPv6 has also been added to Parsec, and it will now be enabled by default on all platforms. This should help improve the connection reliability of peer-to-peer connections by using the IPv6 standards. That wraps up all the major new features for this version of Parsec. I will link the full changelog if you want to go read that. There are a couple small features I skipped, as well as the list of bug fixes. And if you had a weird issue in the past, I do recommend checking out this changelog, as that issue could have been fixed in this version. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Cloud Gaming Report. I hope you guys found this episode both informative as well as enjoyable. And if you did, give it a big like. I do greatly appreciate all that support. Also, if you're not already an existing subscriber, smash that subscribe button to stay tuned for more great videos, as well as future iterations of the Cloud Gaming Report from Provoking Tech. Once again, guys, thanks for watching. And until next time, Zach out.